All right, thank you for joining us. Welcome to Hope in the Darkness. We are here with Shamron Penn, and we're going to be talking about his book. And I want to invite him and welcome him to the Ray Howard Library YouTube channel because it's NaNoWriMo, it's National Novel Writing Month, and he's going to be talking to us about his process. And I'm so pleased that he's joining us today. So please make him feel welcome. And thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say. And the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. And good evening. I hope you and your family are doing well during this unprecedented time. My name is Shamron Penn, pronounced Shamron Penn. I am the author of Fulfilling a Promise Life After the Khmer Rouge. I am excited to be talking to you all and am thankful for the opportunity to share my story. I hope my speech can give you a sense of inspiration, especially during this dark time. Today, I will be talking about important topics such as my writing experience and how to share a story. I will also be talking about what it takes to achieve a goal. Before I get started, I would like to introduce myself and my background. I was born in Pravang province, Cambodia, which is located in Southeast Asia. Cambodia is a nation that is described as beautiful, hot, and wild. It is a country that have a million it is a tourist destination that as millions of people would visit yearly, except in 2020. However, this country has suffered a dark history. In 1975, Cambodia suffered one of the darkest chapters. The Khmer Rouge genocide has slaughtered 2.2 million men, women, and children. Pol Pot, who was the leader of the Khmer Rouge regime, wanted to turn Cambodia into one of the world's largest rice producers. He viewed educators as a threat to slowing down his plan. Therefore, he chose to execute many educators. If anyone looked smart by simply wearing glasses, would be executed immediately. The Khmer Rouge genocide handicapped Cambodia's potential and left behind many uneducators to manage a broken country. It makes life almost impossible, unbearable for the younger generation. Many students, like myself, knew very little about the world beyond our borders. Khmer schools offered limited teachings. Teachers used beatings to push students. There were gangs formed in almost every grade, making it terrifying for students like myself to attend class every day. If I didn't get the opportunity to come study in the US, I didn't know how my life could have turned out. I certainly won't be sitting here talking to you today. I know I am very lucky to be where I am today, and I am thankful for the love and support that I have received from both my families in Cambodia and in the US. I won't be here where I am today without their help, and I am happy to to fulfill my father's dream, to be the first person in my family and one of the few in my country to finish from American college. Now that I have covered my background, I want to tell you why I decided to write this book. This book, Fulfilling a Promise, it all started when I made a promise with the US Embassy in 2008 that I would do whatever I can to give back to my community. I wanted to show not just Americans, but the world that a boy who came from extreme poverty, from one of the poorest countries in the world, didn't just say those words so he could come to the US. I meant what I said, and this book is a symbol of me keeping that promise. But this is more than just fulfilling my promise. It's about giving back to my community. It's about making a difference in all places around the world. I hope that my story can help open doors for more international students to come study, not just in America, but in all other advanced countries around the world. I hope that my story can motivate impoverished children all around the world to pursue education and chase their dreams. It is my father's belief that education is key not just to escape poverty, but also key to solving almost every problem in this world. And life without education is very limited. And that's why I decided to write and use my story to motivate young adults to stay in school. But writing a book isn't easy. In fact, this is one of the hardest things I have ever done in my entire life. I never liked writing. I still don't like writing. But knowing that the greater good is so important. I remember when I was 21, it was a Saturday night when I started writing. It was 11 p.m. I sat in my office, staring at the screen, gathering my thoughts while asking myself, what am I doing? It's Saturday night. I could have gone to see my friend. I could have went to see my sister or do something fun, but instead I'm writing a book. I can't write. English is my second language. And yet I'm writing a book. Am I nuts? But the moment I wanted to tap out, the moment I wanted to quit, I thought of the impoverished children in Cambodia who would do anything to be in where I am today. I thought of the international students who are being forced out of this country due to the administration's policy. I thought of the immigrants, especially the people of color, who are being labeled as criminals. All of that sparked a fire in me. I told myself I was committed and I would do whatever it takes to finish this project. And four long and difficult years later, here I am holding this book, telling you that if you believe in yourself, if you committed and willing to do whatever it takes, you will achieve your goals. Now that I have covered my writing experience, I would encourage you to share your own story. I believe that regardless of our differences, we all have a story. We all have a book inside of us. Just some of us a little shy to share. Trust me, I was one of them. But stories could unite us. I learned so much from sharing my story. For a long time, I have thought my life is full of sorrows. But after hearing other people's stories, I realized I'm not alone. And stories allowed me to understand someone better for who they are. It educates me on the subjects that I don't know enough about. Stories allowed me to be a better person. So if you've ever wanted to share your story, here are some of my advice. Step one, just spit it out. And what I mean by that is when you struggle writing, just continue writing. I know it sounds strange. I remember when I first finished my first chapter, I handed it to one of my editors, who's also my brother-in-law. He looked at my writing and then he told me, your writing is awful, full of broken grammar. The dialogue is good, but everything else, but it doesn't matter because my content was big enough that all the stuff I had taken out, I still have enough to form a chapter. So yes, just keep writing, spit it out. Don't worry about the grammar, don't worry about the content. You can always edit later. Step two, show, don't tell. When it comes to writing, I like to paint an image to tell the audience of what is it that I'm experiencing. Take us there with you. What is it like to be in that moment? Show us the feeling, show us the smell, the environment. What is it like to be there? Take us there. I like to think of it like the movie Christmas Carol. If any of you have seen the movie Christmas Carol, when the ghosts of the Christmas spirit take the old gentleman back in time and see all the bad things that he did. Well, ignore the bad things. The bad things are relevant. But the point is to show your audience what it's like to be there in that exact moment. If you could do that smoothly, and that is key to page turner, that is key to capture your audience. Step 3, pick important points of your story. I like to think of my story like pieces of puzzles. I started out with my childhood in Cambodia, obtaining my American student visa, coming to the US, studying in high school, and then going back to Cambodia, and ultimately fulfilling my father's dream. And when I put all those pieces together, I get one big picture. And what is that picture that I want my audience to see? It's the same thing for you. Pick out important points and make sure those points connect, just like a water stream. Just make sure they flow smoothly. And what is it that you want your audience to see? Step 4, pick the audience. And this is important because if the answer is everyone, well, then that's no one. Who is your audience? And what is it that you want out of your audience? Picking the right audience will allow you to plot the story that you want to tell. It is important to find the right audience, and your story can base off the audience that you're targeting. Step 5, find a purpose. What is the reason of your writing? What do you want out of it? And this is important. Remember what I was telling you earlier about my reasons of my writing, because that allowed me to overcome all the obstacles during writing. And writing is hard, yes, but if there's a will, there's a way. And if you can find a good enough reason, you will overcome those obstacles. And remember, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to share your story. Be yourself. You will never know what you can do until you try. If you ever want to share your story with me, you can visit my website, www.fulfillingapromise.com/story. I'm looking forward to see your story. Now that I have covered my writing experience, I want to give you a sense of inspiration that I hope will motivate you to pursue your dreams, especially during this pandemic. Since I was young, I always thought I am the underdog, or I still am the underdog. I always thought the odds were always against me. During my student visa application, many immigration attorneys have told my sponsors that there was no way I could pass. The US government wanted money coming outside of the US rather than having its citizens sponsoring a foreign boy. My family couldn't afford for the tuition. And yet my English was so little that there's no way I could pass. It would be impossible, they said. And yet my sponsors believed in me. And due to the hard work that I have put in and the promise that I made with the US Embassy, it allowed me to overcome what was considered as impossible. Living in the US wasn't easy either, with very little English skills and not knowing anything about the American culture had set me up for failure. And yet I was able to continue to work hard because I knew that I was my family's last hope to be the first person to finish school. I knew that there are many impoverished children in Cambodia that would do anything to be in my position. All of that sparked a fire in me. It makes me to work hard in school, and I never failed a class while studying in the US. Playing football while being the smallest person on the field was tough. Some coaches didn't think I could play. They thought I was too weak. I wasn't their guy. And yet my effort prevailed yet again. I was named the starting running back my junior year in high school. Writing this book while having English as my second language was extremely difficult. And yet my ambition pushed me forward. My point is, if you believe in yourself, and if you're committed and willing to do whatever it takes, you will achieve your goal. regardless of how hard a task is, no matter how hard a circumstance could be, believe in yourself. If there is a will, there is a way. And if you're willing to work hard, you will achieve your goals. Let my experience show you that anything is possible as long as you have the will. You will never know what you can do until you try. Thank you for listening, and I will be taking questions if you have any.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. And you had a lot of wonderful things to say about writing. I love that. I'm going to ask you a few questions to get the ball rolling,
Of
and
course.
we'll see if we get any questions to follow those. So my first question, and you answered this a little bit already, but I would like to hear, what was the first thing you wrote about this story? What got you started writing this particular book? Like, what was the first thing that you wrote down that got you started on it?
Well, the first thing that I wrote down was I just wanted to just give back to my community. When I started writing, well, first of all, I got to be honest, because if I told you that I wanted to become an author one day, that would be a lie, because I never wanted to be an author. Writing has never been my skill set. It still isn't. But I just wanted just to help. I always told myself, how am I going to give back to my community? How am I going to fulfill my promise? And yet I knew that my story is unique. Therefore, I decided to write. And knowing that the odds were very high against me finishing this book, especially with having English as my second language, I still wanted to give it a shot. I still believe in myself. So, yes, when I started writing, it's just, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how long this process could get. I didn't know how hard it will be. But I knew that I'm willing to finish this, and I would do anything to finish this. And yet, here I am.
And
Does
it
that
sounds
answer
like
your question?
you have like so much passion for it. It does sound like you have so much to say as someone who didn't start out thinking they were going to write a book. You ended up writing a book, and it sounds like there's something in you that you really needed to answer. So that got me asking.
Yeah,
It looks like Josie has a question.
of course.
Josie asks, what was a surprising obstacle in your writing, something that you hadn't counted on? And related, what was a surprising motivator in your writing?
Well, the surprising obstacle would be just writing in general, to be honest. Again, writing has never been my strength. But if you know, it's the mind, the beautiful thing about having um, belief is that if you believe in yourself enough, you would tell yourself that anything is possible. And I know when I started writing, this felt like a mountain that I had to climb. But I believe in myself, and there was no doubt, regardless of how long it was going to take. I still would push myself. There were times that I write that I felt so tired, and I would take a nap. That I would come back and write again, and I felt really tired, and I would take a nap again. But there was no stopping in me. Yes, it was a long time. It was a long process, but I never quit. And that's the obstacles that I ran into, just how difficult this is and how long of a process this could take. But the only thing that could stop you is you. And that's when I learned that, if you believe in yourself enough, you will continue to move forward. And the time, yes, it is a long process, but you will get there. It's like running a marathon. Every step forward is closer to your goal. In terms of the unexpected, what was the second part of the question? Could you repeat that?
Something you hadn't counted on, and then what was a surprising motivator? Like, what was something that actually helped you stay motivated?
So, one thing that helped me stay motivated, and I know this might sound a little bit strange, playing football, helped me a lot. I always figured out, I take the lesson I learned in football into life. Is when your life knock you down, when someone knock you down, it's all about how you respond. And that's what I learned from football, is that when someone knock you down, it's all about how you respond and how you get back up. And that's one thing I learned is that, in life is tough. Don't get me wrong, it's very difficult, but when life knocks you down, it's always about how you get back up. And that's how I felt when I was going to writing. When things gets tough, when there were part of the paragraphs or the chapters that I feel like I couldn't get it done, I decided to keep going because I know there's a way for me to answer to that challenge. And there was time that I would go up to Google or other people's book and not write, read their examples. And then I put it into my own thought. And I learned that, oh, wow, like the way to capture this part is just to express your feelings. And how could you express that? Creative writing is really still my weakness. But if you read enough examples, you can get the answer to what is it that you're looking for. I hope that answered your question.
So Dion Green has a question. She
Yes.
says, was there a class or instructor in college that helped push you to continue to write, or
I,
that gave you more energy around telling your story?
yeah.
And I think you told us that you went to college here in the Seattle area, and I
Yes.
think I shared. Did you go to UW?
I did. So I went to, I started at Bellevue College for 2 years, and then I transferred to the University of Washington, and I finished with a business degree, actually. So, in terms of taking a real writing class, I took some writing classes at Bellevue College, but when I transferred to the University of Washington, I didn't really take any real writing classes, if you may. I mean, I took business writing, but that's mostly just business ethics. But the writing I took was just, in high school and in my community college, so that was good. But in terms of having writing experience at all, writing while before writing this book, it was probably, I would say, no. I mean, I have some experience, but it probably wasn't enough, to be honest. But then again, is there any enough experience for you to write? So the lesson to learn is, just because if you don't think you're a writer, doesn't mean you cannot be a writer. Just because you're not a business major doesn't mean you cannot open a business. That's what I'm trying to say. And you don't ever doubt yourself. That's one thing I would say. Don't ever doubt yourself. Always believe yourself. And just because something is difficult, it doesn't mean it cannot be done. There's always a way to learn. And the process that I learned while writing this book is that when you get stuck, there's always examples around you to write a certain part. And one thing that I learned about writing is that, obviously, read other people's examples, read other people's stories. So that can give you a sense of an idea of how you should write a certain part. And there are a lot of good books out there to read. And trust me, reading isn't really my strength either. But when I get stuck, and then the beautiful thing about living in this day is that there are so many sources available for you to study and to learn. The beautiful thing about internet is that you can look at other people's examples. You can Google creative writing, and people would give you examples of how to do creative writing. Again, it's just about how much you're willing to participate and willing to move forward. In terms of experience, I don't think I have enough experience, but that didn't stop me from doing it. So
That's very inspirational. I love hearing that. And then, as a librarian, I love hearing that you are reading a lot of books to get experience to push you forward. Would you recommend any books, either a writing book or a book or a novel, or do you have any recommendations about books that you think would help another writer help write their story better?
well, it depends. We there are so many books available. I read uh, the book that I really enjoy reading. It depends on what kind of story you like to read too. If you want to read a fictional story, then read something like Harry Potter or other books. If you want to read a nonfiction story, first Born as a Crime by Trevor Noah is a good book that I read. Also, First They Killed My Father is a good suggestion. Or you can even read my book to see how I did it. But again, I'm not the expert, but I do believe that my story is compelling and could give you an idea of how to write your story as well. But there are so many books out there that you can read and get an idea. And one thing I forgot to mention during my speech, I have met this great gentleman who is also an author. He's also Cambodian. He speaks almost no English. He couldn't write in English. the way he wrote his book, the way he wrote his book is that he wrote it in Khmer, which is the language of Cambodians, and then he would talk to other Americans and have them help him translate it into English, which is another inspirational lesson that I learned. You know, when you don't write English at all or speak English, almost no English at all, and yet you still wrote a book in English, and that is really inspiring. And I met him, and he told me like, oh yeah, writing English, no, that's not my thing, but there's a way, and that goes to the same thing that I said earlier. If there's a will, there's a way, and regardless of how hard it is, if you believe in it enough, then there's a way.
That is a truly interesting, truly inspirational story too. I
Yeah.
think that's awesome.
There's so much sources in this world that we can find that can keep us going.
Yeah.
In the age of the internet.
So I will link to all of those books that you mentioned. I'll put them in the description of this video so that people can find them, including your book. I'll make sure that people can find your book.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I think I think Josephina is asking another question. I think a lot of emphasis is given to years of experience, as if that invalidates your experiences just because you're young or a first-time writer. I think that's very true. Thank you, Josephina. I think being a young writer doesn't mean that you have less wisdom than an older writer, and so I think that that's kind of an awesome thing. How do you deal with criticism? She says, have you had any criticism being a younger writer?
That's a really good question. I would say that criticism has always been a part of my life, and I know that there will always be people that like you or hate you for who you are. But the thing is, don't let those criticism affect you. Since I was young, I had people that always criticize my family and I, and that's always has been a part of our lives. And till this day, people still hate me or like me. But the thing is, don't let other people's criticism affect you. And if you do that, that will prevent you from reaching your true potential. So the idea is just be you. And if people like you for it, great. If people don't, then that's fine too. It's just a part of life. So have I received any criticism? I'm sure, but I try not to let it affect me. So that way, I can continue doing what I love doing. So again, criticism is just an opinion. It doesn't mean someone is correct. But the biggest thing out of that is just don't let people criticism, regardless if it's positive or negative, affect you from being who you are.
Okay, so I have a couple more. I have two more questions. Did you outline or do any work to structure before you started writing the book?
Yeah.
Did you use binders or notebooks or post-it notes? Some people find stuff like that useful.
Yeah. Again, I would challenge you to be as organized as possible. I know it sounds strange, but when it comes to writing, and I met this other author who is a non-fictional writer. He wrote his book based off what up here. So what he told me, I asked him, so how did you create those characters, especially for a non-fiction story? And a fictional story. I apologize. I meant fictional story.
Right.
And he said, when you write and when you learn enough about the characters, even if it's a fictional story, you will know about the characters and it will comes out. It just comes out to you. And I did the same thing when it comes to writing. Yes, I like to point out the important points. Remember when I said pick important points of your life, or if it's a fictional story, non-fictional story, just pick important points of the story. What is it that you want to go and what is it that you want to cover? So that point will allow you to create the story that you want to tell. So I pick out the important points of the chapter that I want to tell. And then I write, and then it just comes out to me. It's like me being who I was when I was 7. Again, when I first was writing, I started writing, the age that I pick up was 6 years old. And if you say, how could you remember when you're that young? Well, the life that I live was kind of hard to forget, to be honest. But the thing is, when I started writing, it clicks, it comes back to me, and the characters around that I was with, come back to me. And then I just feel like I was reliving that life once again. So yes, before you write, even if it's just a chapter, pick important points. Did I do, could I have done a better job of organizing my thoughts or organizing my plans for, writing? Absolutely. But I didn't really do much of organizing. I just feel like, if I had all the important points in the chapter and started writing, it just comes to me. Again, don't worry about the earlier steps. Just get it out. And then you can always edit it later. You can always form the function of your story later. So, yes.
Yeah, sure. Finishing the book is the important part. Yes, I
Absolutely.
agree with that. Definitely. All right. I have a question about, let's see. Before you published this, would you call yourself a writer? Had you written other creative nonfiction or fiction before this? Had you been writing other things like, little nonfiction stories or little short stories before this?
Uh, no, and I know that sounds bad, but no, I have not write any
It
fiction.
doesn't sound bad. This is what
Anything.
started you
It's just,
writing. This is
this,
this is how you started.
yes, the story of my writing is just my ambition. I know it sounds strange. I know, trust me, when I was writing, I knew the odds were against me. I asked myself, who is going to listen to me? I'm too young to do this. But as we know, age is not a factor. When is it will ever be the right age to write a book, So if the thing is, if you have a good enough reason to do it, that will motivate you to keep moving forward. So that's the thing. I knew I had no experience writing ever before. The fact for my papers that I do for my classes. But other than that, I don't have any experience writing a book or any other fictional stories or anything like that before. I just realized that I have a unique story and I want to share my story with the world. And I know that my story can motivate and help open doors for more international students to come study, not just in America, but in other countries around the world. And I know that is the core of my story and my plan. So that's why I chose to write. And again, if you can find a good purpose, a good reason to write, you too will be able to finish your story.
Are you going to keep writing?
I don't know. And I forgot to answer you the second part of your writing. I would never call myself a writer because I don't
Hmm.
think writing is my strength. And if I write again, I would know how to write better because the first thing I learned is that, having the first book done is a good accomplishment, but still I know what it's like to write a book. So if I go back with the experience that I had, that would help me to write. If I do
Sure.
write a second book, that would help me to understand what it takes.
You finished the book. I think you can. It's going to be a piece of cake to write a short story now.
Well, I don't know about piece of cake, but it certainly should be easier than the first one. But yes.
What was the most difficult part of your journey looking back on writing this book overall and working on the book overall?
Um, just reliving the life that I lived. And I don't want to get emotional, but I live I would say again, I always feel like the odds were always against me. And the hardest thing that I have to do was being away from my family. I didn't say that I was the youngest child in my family. I couldn't, when I was young, I couldn't live, at age 6, I couldn't live a day without my mother. But the next thing you know, I'm 6 years away from my family. So that was really tough. And especially right now too, when I can't go back to visit my mom. So that's really tough. And also my father passed when in 2014 in my senior year in college. So that was also really tough. So being away from my family was extremely difficult, but I know that, this is an opportunity for me to gain an adequate education. And I know that there are many Cambodian children would do anything to be in my position. So I cannot throw away this luck that I have. And I know that if I could share my story, perhaps I can spare my luck on other Cambodian children or other impoverished children around the world as well. So this is really the only hope for me, is to hope open doors for more impoverished children to come study in other advanced countries.
I'm so sorry. Yes, that absolutely makes sense. Um, okay, and my very last question is, tell us about the times that you felt like this book would never be finished and what helped keep you going. Because I know that there are people out there that are in the same position and are trying so hard to keep going because they're trying to write a novel right now, and it would be wonderful if you could help keep them going.
Yes. There were so many times that I felt like I am unfit to write a book. And when I get to the core of the story, it gets so emotional, and I just feel like, God, I don't want to write this anymore. It's painful and it's hard, and it's difficult. But the moment that you feel like you want to quit, just feel like, if I can put one step forward, that is one step forward to finishing my goal. You can always take a break. You can always take a deep breath. If you feel like you're struggling, my advice is just leave the project, just go for a run or make dinner or whatever. Just, refresh yourself, but don't forget about the writing. Just come back, spend an hour a day or 2 hours a week or whatever. Just don't forget about the writing. And that's what I did. When things get tough, when I feel like it's hard for me to continue, I just save the writing and then go for a run or go to a gym or make dinner or whatever, talk to my friends. But I never forget about the writing. I come back the next day or the next week and I sit down and give it an hour in or another hour, another day. But just keep going. Don't forget. Again, just know that you in it for the long run. This is not something that can be finished in a day or a month, but you should never ever give up. And that is important, because if you don't give up, you will come back and write. And when things get tough, just take a deep breath, go do something fun, but then come back and continue writing. Again, even if it's one sentence a minute or one
Mm-hmm.
paragraph a day, the more you put in, the
Mm-hmm.
more you get closer to your goal.
That's very good advice. It looks like Josephina has one more question. Do you think being multilingual made your writing process different? I love that question. It's a very unique question.
Yeah. So I came here when I was 13, and I've been in the U.S. for almost I would say half my life now. And being multilingual is well, bilingual, so I would say I speak Khmer and English, obviously. But the thing is, I would think that I would speak better English than I would speak Khmer. I can absolutely read English more than I can read Khmer now. But yes, it's difficult because there are parts that I feel like the life that I live in Cambodia is different than in the US. And if I want to explain that specific scene or environment, I can't really do that in English because it's a different world in Cambodia. So then I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to explain this to the audience? How am I going to show this environment to the audience? But then I talked to my sister and my brother-in-law, who is, one of my editors, and then she would help me to correct my idea and my thoughts and how I can do it. And I always double check with my siblings in Cambodia too, just to make sure I'm telling this correct way, especially when it comes to cultural differences and the religious stuff in Cambodia that are different than than in the US. So always check with my siblings. But speaking different languages to write a book, I would say it's actually harder for me to write it in Khmer than in English right now. But always do the research, especially when it comes to things that you don't know. And again, I feel like the biggest advantage of me having while writing this book is just the available sources that I have. Again, living in the age of the internet, it's such a convenient thing. And when you struggle or you don't understand a certain part, I went back and I did a research about Cambodian wedding that I don't know enough about, and then I read about the setting, and then I came back, and then I put that in my own words, obviously, and then tell them about my experience that I had. And then I mentioned the Cambodian wedding just because it's in my book when my brother-in-law, who is my sponsor, married to my sister, and I had to explain that setting to the audience. And Cambodian wedding is much different than American wedding, so I have to explain that to the American readers, and that was challenging. But there's a way. There's a will. There's a way, and I did my research, and I was able to tell the story.
That's fascinating. So, did you feel like some passages were just very difficult to explain in English? And
Absolutely.
yeah,
So many scenes that I feel like I don't know how to say this. I feel
there's
like,
no way to translate that.
yeah, but again, just don't doubt yourself. Just feel
Yeah,
like just because it's difficult doesn't mean it cannot be done. If you have the mentality, you will achieve your goal. You will get it done, and that's the mentality that I had going to this book, and which is everything really. You know, going to school in America, playing football, I just have that mentality that, you know what, I believe in myself and I know that if I work hard and if I continue to do it, I will get there. And the same thing when it comes to challenges, if you feel like you don't want to write anymore, great, take a break, but don't forget about what is it that you're in and always think that you're in it for the long term. This is not something it's going to be easy, but believe in yourself. And that is really key, not just to writing, but life in general. So yes.
that's so inspirational, and I'm so glad that we had you.
Yeah, and
So
one more thing I would like to say, if you
yeah,
ever wanted to contact me to ask for more advice that you feel like you didn't get to ask me, you can email me or you can go to my website and message me, and then I will reply to you. Again, you can do it on the story section. Just say, hey, thank you for giving us a speech or whatnot. I have a question I've got to ask you.
let's
You can also,
remind uh,
I'm
let's
sorry?
remind the viewers of your website just
Yes,
at the end of the video here.
yes. It's just fulfillingapromise.com, just the title of my book.
Okay. Okay, great. And then I will put the link of your website and I will put your book title and the books that you mentioned earlier in the description of this video. Is there anything else you want to share
Um,
before we
yeah,
stop?
just it's a dark time right now, and just don't lose hope. I know that there will be light at the end of the tunnel, and my message to you, who especially are students pursuing education during this pandemic, just takes one step at a time, day by day, sentence by sentence, or whatever. Just always believe in yourself, and always have remind yourself that what is the goal, what is my intention. And I know it's tough because I don't know what it's like to be going to school during a pandemic. I was very blessed to finish school before this whole thing started, but always believe in yourself. And I know it's hard, but always trying to find a purpose. What is it you're trying to achieve? And that is key to motivating you and will help you to get out of bed in the morning, I promise.
I think that's true. I think that's true. So, yes, students, definitely believe in yourself. If you need help, the librarians have a 24-hour chat on our website at library.shoreline.edu. So, you can also have the librarians help you. But yeah, and I think we're gonna see if we can have Shamron come back and maybe do another talk for us for Poetry Month or some other event because we've loved having him. So
And
all right.
you can reach out to me anytime. Don't be afraid to reach out to me. You can contact me via Facebook. It's just my first and last name. Hopefully you find the right person, but you'll see
Awesome.
my picture on my profile, so you won't find any other with my name in the
Well,
US.
thank you for joining us. All right, and I'm gonna close up our stream. It looks like we still have viewers, but so everybody say bye. Wave
Thank you
bye.
for listening, everybody, and
Okay.
stay safe.
Stay safe. Bye.